Q&A, if you will. So how many of you feel comfortable talking about your own career challenges in this group? 2 hands, 3 hands, 4 hands, 5 hands? Okay. Good. I think as we open up, more people will talk about it. I do this quite often. I speak quite a lot and with people, and it's interesting. When I ask people about their career challenges, how many of you are dealing with a bad boss, and nobody raises their hands? And then I say, how many of you have friends who are dealing with bad bosses? And everybody raises their hands, so it's kind of interesting. So, Klaus, please come on over and share your story.
Yes, good evening. It's a great honor to be invited to this wonderful gathering and this great panel. It is without question that I'm here because of Nagesh, who told me, Klaus, you might be a good example for an intrapreneurial experience, because I worked for 36 years with only one company. Never was laid off, never was fired, was close to it a few times, but you know, I started after getting my bachelor's degree and diploma from the University of Aachen with a company called Siemens, and it was Siemens Medical at the time. And I grew up as a single child. And one of my parents always told me, my very early youth, I didn't want to speak. So I'm not talking in my mother tongue here, so excuse me when I sometimes stumble a little bit. But I didn't want to speak, and you know, one of the measures for speaking when you're very young is that you can say a sentence with at least 4 words. And that reminds me of an interesting story that I read about Albert Einstein. So this is the only similarity that he probably has to speak. He didn't want to speak, and at the age of 3, his birthday, the parents gathered the family and the siblings, and everybody was at the dinner table, and little Albert was sitting in a high chair at the dinner table. And the soup was being served, the mother was sitting down, and all of a sudden Albert said, "The soup is cold." 4-word sentence. Oh my God, everybody was so excited around the table that he had spoken, and the mother said, "Albert, what's the problem? Why haven't you spoken so far?" And Albert said, "So far, everything was fine." So, having said that, see, speaking is not one of the natural things for me. And, you know, 36 years with Siemens, how can one do that and enjoy it? So, enjoy going to work, I wouldn't say every day, but every week. And I can say I did it every week. And why did it happen? I give you just 3 very little stories. I started out as an engineer in the CT group, which was brand new in 1973. And CT, computerized tomography, was completely different from just standard X-ray. It is X-ray, but it is reconstructed X-ray, transaxial imaging. And it required certainly a little bit more effort to bring this about. It was invented by a non-medical company, EMI, in Great Britain, and it was one of the big disruptive innovations at the time. So Siemens was trying to repeat that, what EMI had done, and I happened to be an engineer around that group and was finally in that group. And I was there for 2 years, and I had to say I was just an engineer with many others. But there came an opportunity, and that was to introduce this technology to the sales force in the United States. And It had to be introduced because selling X-ray, after 50 years selling X-ray is simple, but selling a CT out of the same sales force was kind of complicated and required some kind of different training. So I decided that I volunteer for this position, and this was a change in my career. My wife had to quit her job, so I had to move, and these were the decisions that you had to make. I didn't feel they were very risky because I was never afraid what might happen. So I came to the United States, and I explained a lot about CT to the sales force, went to all different cities from Houston to Pittsburgh to Cleveland. And the thing that I enjoyed most was talking to the salespeople, and over the salespeople meeting customers. So my first word to you, what is important in an entrepreneurial experience and career, I think, is getting to know customers. Customers who really pay for the product that is being designed. A very important experience for me at that particular time. And I think everything I did after that was based on this component, customer. I did this for a year. We sold 3 CT systems at the time, not a lot, but it was a start. And in 1981, about 4 years later, when I came back from the United States, I was asked by the management in the United States to come back and head up the technical support group, which was something related between R&D and sales. And I was happy to do this. This opened up an opportunity for me to, for the first time, to really have people responsibility, manage the capabilities of other people, not my own. And that was a tremendous opportunity, and out of that, the people element, customer was first, the people element, my second message, is very, very important. During that time, I got into a very interesting development, and that was the MR development. And I was now more on the marketing sales side, not in the MR field, but MR happened to be a very exciting new technology. And after the technical support group was completely rebuilt after 4 years, the company decided that it would be time to do something else, and I had all this experience in the United States of the field of MR. They asked me if I would go back to run in the R&D environment, the application group for MR. Step back, some people would say, but for me this was a tremendous opportunity, a new challenge, and I took it. But I took with me the people element of managing capabilities of others, not my own. My third story, this is leading to the term process. In 1972, Siemens was one of the big companies in ultrasound. 1972, before my time. They completely stopped that development and went into CT, computerized tomography and magnetic resonance, invested all the money there by good reasons. But then in the late 90s, after I was for a while then also marketing manager for MR, the company decided it is time to rebuild our competence and to rebuild our effort in ultrasound. So, being marketing manager MR, having some experience with building something, the company decided, well, Klaus, you go back to the United States and start a new ultrasound company. This was my first CEO position, and what did I learn in the first CEO position? Certainly, customers are very important. People, including customers, are the most important resource you have, we have, what we can do. But there is something that became very important to me, and in many startups, this is very much on the back burner. And very important is process. Process, the step from project to process. In a project, by definition, everything is new. If you run a company, to do everything new is a nightmare. You have to have something that is standard, that is repetitive, and I call this process management. And this is what I learned in my first CEO position, with many to follow. So I came through the engineering, marketing ranks into management, and after 15 years I was the CEO of the ultrasound group. I was the CEO of the angiographic group after that. I was the CEO of the CT group after that, and I was the CEO of the AX group, the entire X-ray business and angio business for Siemens. And I was again the CEO for ultrasound. And after that was a scenario with 6 transfers in different countries with family, with my wife, who stayed with me through not only the 36 years, but now 40 years of life with our 2 children. I was very happy to be in a global organization and had a lot of experience, and most of the time, I have to say, nearly every week, I enjoyed working for a global company. Thank you very much.
Okay, so what I would like to do in the next few minutes is to share with you some of the patterns that I see with clients who come to me. And these clients who come to me usually come to me for a reason. And the most common one is they feel stalled in their career. So let me just quickly go through some of the things that I have observed and tell you what the underlying reasons are as the patterns that I see. And then we'll open up for questions, because some of those patterns you might be able to see. So the career problems people come to me for is they're stuck in one place. They're not moving. As Nagesh was saying, every 4 years he found a new opportunity and went for it, even though, as Klaus said, it was not necessarily a promotion. So we are hung up on this linear progression of a career. So think of it somewhat holistically in terms of, do you want a promotion or do you want to grow? And if the answer is, I want to grow, then that's a better choice than to have a fancier title and be stagnant. So remember that, because I see this in my clients all the time. If you're making lateral moves in your career, then you need to think through whether you're managing your career properly. That means you're just moving without growing, or moving without creating greater value. And I see this a lot. You cannot get juicy assignments, then you need to think through to see what you need to do to change that. Either get out of the company or do something intrapreneurially inside. And there are lots of opportunities that if you just open your eyes, as you heard, you can actually articulate that opportunity and go to somebody. And I've done this with my clients, so this is not a fantasy. This is how I get my clients unstuck, who feel stuck in the companies. The other thing is, I find, as Klaus was saying, and I see this as a pattern, a lot of us, especially people from my part of the world, especially those who come from India, they're very smart, and that's why they are here. And what they don't let go of is how smart I am. This is true. I'm not making this up. So in the meeting, and I'll tell you a story of a client of mine who is only 33, and he is a vice president at a very fast-growing major company in this valley. And he is now being considered for an SVP position, and they put a stop on it. And the reason, in fact, I'm going to see the president this Monday, and 2 or 3 of his SVP colleagues, as to what we need to do to get this guy unstuck. He's 33, he joined this company about 2 years ago, 31, and rose from a director to senior director to VP. That's how fast track he was on. And the reason he was on such a fast track, he's extremely smart. And when I started working with him, and I just want to tell you this story because I see this pattern in especially smart people who are ambitious in their career. So when he started working with me, we set 3 objectives after I kind of did the diagnosis on him. And I said you need these three things. You need an ability to create an articulate vision of what you want to do. The second thing you need is a way to execute that vision in a flawless way. And the third thing you need is an ability to build relationships where people trust you. In the last 2 years that I worked with him, we succeeded in the first two, and he's stuck on the third one. So, the point I want to make is, the fact that we are so smart works while you're on the campus, getting your degree and getting your, 4.0 and so forth. But as soon as you come into the corporate world, it's a necessary condition, but it's not sufficient to get you where you want to go. It actually gets in the way. It actually gets in the way. As we heard, you call somebody stupid in the meeting, right? And you feel good instantaneously, but that gets in the way. That gets in the way, and trust me, this happens to a lot of people. So what I want you to kind of get from this is, once you come into the corporate world, IQ matters, but what matters more than IQ is EQ, emotional intelligence. So you need, and the interesting thing about it is, IQ is God-given, you can't change it. But EQ is something you can develop by learning how to grow your EQ. It's nurtured, it's not nature. So the people who are stuck, like this guy is, at a VP level, and I'm going to hopefully get him unstuck, it's the EQ. He's suffering from EQ problem. And that's a curable disease, right? And as long as you know how to manage your IQ and EQ, you can deal with that. So relationships are very important in your career, and understanding how you treat people. As Klaus was saying, it's about people and processes. How do you get things? It's easy to conceive of a thing to do, but until you get it done, it's no good for anybody. It's the execution and delivery of what you intend to do. Okay, so those are some of the observations I have here from my 5,000 data points that I have worked with over the last 10 years. And with that, I think I would like to kind of give it to the audience, because we have about half hour of Q&A, and I would like to vector it to the panelists here, and maybe some of them I can answer. So who wants to go first? Any questions? Any career issues people have? Yes?
So it's good that you talked about smart people, and so what happens if you feel that you've outlived your talent? Some days you feel like that, right? And some days you feel smart, and some days you don't feel that smart, and you think that maybe you are not as smart. So how do you get over that?
Okay.
And I think I would ask Nagesh to answer that.
Okay. Let me preface that by one statement, and then I'll let Nagesh answer that. There is a famous quote by Eleanor Roosevelt, and I'll quote it and I'll vector it to Nagesh. And the quote is, "Nobody makes you feel inferior without your consent." Have you heard that quote?
Now I have.
Now you have. Okay. Nagesh, go ahead.
Like he mentioned about being smart. Now I'll make a confession. I'm not very smart, but I'm very lucky. And the lucky doesn't happen until you do certain things. And for that, you don't have to be very smart. So this emphasis on being smarter than the next guy is not relevant. So you think about, how you can make things happen for you. And there are many things that you have to understand around you, the environment, the ecosystem you work with, to do that. One of the things is, say like you are a scientist, as I was many years, but it took me time to understand, how did the company make money? I learned how to read a balance sheet, how to see P&L statement. You ask a number of people who work for the companies, ask who are the customers where they go to. You can do your chromatography and all of those things, but still, if you are able to think, you can create this luck that I'm talking about. You don't have to be very smart for that.
Thank you. Anybody else? Kailash?
I think I had my 2 cents worth. I think that's a good position to be in. You're not in denial. You're being intellectually honest, which is the biggest problem that inhibits personal growth. When people keep imagining and dreaming things that they don't really have or possess. So to recognition that your skills or your knowledge may have now room to increase or grow vertically or horizontally is probably 60% of the battle. Now you have to sit down and say, okay, what should I do? I'm very young, I've got 45 years more to go, and you look like you do, professional, And so what is my best sharpening of my couple of these pencils that I do have that I've gotten blunt, and then go sharpen it and get some more advice from people who are senior to you, who are more accomplished than you perhaps, some of the peer groups, and do a very serious and sincere inventory of all the inputs and go for it. That's the only thing I can suggest.
Yeah, very short. If you have accomplished on the learning side or on the management side or on the knowledge side one step of a ladder, I think you are responsible for seeing the opportunity to get to the next step and to say, well, I have really explored my level of skill sets. That can't be true. There is always something new that I can learn and that you can learn, I'm absolutely sure. The interesting part is I thought when I finished my exams that I thought, I'm done. I have done Maxwell equations, so that's big enough for me, and that's it. No, it's not big enough, and this was something that I learned how to do, and with great difficulty, I have to admit. But it told me that if I can do that, I can do so much other things that are more interesting and more fun, and specifically in the field of relationship, of networking, of anticipating what is the right moment to call somebody, what is the right moment to come to a decision. To learn that is a lifetime experience and it will never end.
Thank you. Thank you. There's something I would like to add here that I see in the pattern of the clients I work with, is that, and I can say this with great certainty or great confidence, that almost everybody who comes to me grossly underestimates what they are capable of. And there is no exception. I've yet to see a client when I challenge them to do something, they say, there's no way I can do that. And then we'll figure out a way to do it, and not only do they do it, but they do it then and then some more. So don't shortchange yourself by thinking that you cannot do certain things. And there's a great quote that I always use by Emerson, is that your reach should be greater than your grasp. And just remember that we all are capable of much greater than what we think we are. So remember that along with the pill that you heard about this earlier today. Okay, anybody else? Any other questions?
Yes. I have one. So thanks for sharing your experiences and insights. So my question is about, the tough times or economic downturns, and there are not as many opportunities or budget cuts, job cuts. So how can we manage a career at that time and not just survive, but achieve your career goals also, which is increasingly becomes harder?
Okay, I'll tell you what I have done, and I will let the panel talk about their own experiences. This has been what I call the kind of ambient environment since 2001. And the interesting thing about tough economic environment, it's a double-edged sword. I mean, if you look at it from an outsider standpoint, you can see gloom and doom. But if you go inside the companies are as confused as you can imagine. Just look around. Layoffs, consolidations, mergers, acquisition, all of that going on. And when this is going on, there are tremendous opportunities inside the company that if you just open up your eyes and talk to the customer, as Klaus was saying, and see what is not happening from their experience that could happen better. And if you're able to capture that and translate that into an internal initiative that you can do, then you have job security forever. And I'm not making this up. This is what I do with my clients. When clients come to me and say, Dilip, Cisco is laying off a lot of people, how can I, stave the layoff? And we figured out a way to identify some initiative that their department could do and figure out a way to get that elevated 2 or 3 levels above it and get that sponsored. And that's something that anybody can do. Nobody has a monopoly on it. So think about from that perspective than worrying about how bad the economy is. With that, I would like to pass it on to anybody from the panel.
Yeah, I think this is a phenomenon that we see at the moment, and also this may not be life science panel here in total, but my experience specifically with healthcare is that by now we see a time where healthcare becomes increasingly expensive. It is available for everybody, but at expenses that are prohibitive, and we all feel that it comes to some kind of an implosion, or it comes to an end where somebody says, well, we have to change it. Now some people say, oh my God, what a disaster that this happens to me. I cannot do anything in life science. I would say this is the moment of opportunity where you feel that things are going to change, and you have to ask yourself, can I be part of that change? And if you look around specifically in the Silicon Valley, I think there are unbelievable opportunities to change the way we do medicine. And that means from a business model, that means from an incentive for innovations in a big way. And I just had a few discussions here tonight already with companies where we really see that on the oncology field, cost structures can completely change. So, disaster or economic difficulties always have been around. And there have always been people that use these difficulties to their advantage. And then it comes to what Dilip said, it's a mindset. Are you part of those that see the opportunity? I hope so. Or are you part of those that, are managed? You lead, then you change.
I think I just had a couple of points. I do agree that, particularly for the U.S. economy, I think the long-term prospects are not very good. That's my view. This country is going to, there's a thermodynamic effect that's going on. Long-term, the world is going to equilibrate, and we've enjoyed a huge advantage in quality of life and consumption in America for many years. The rest of the world is catching up, and there is a zero-sum game, so to say, at some level. So the incomes are going to continue declining in real dollars. The rest are going to catch up, and people have to adjust their lives. So that's one dimension, that is a generic dimension. It has nothing to do with you, but overall, that's where this country is headed. And if we don't accept that, then we'll have to sort of keep looking at the scenery every 10 years and seeing some sort of a pattern change. I think the healthcare, in my mind, also stands out as probably the biggest opportunity for the United States. Given the nature of innovation, personalized medicine, cheaper medical devices, use of technology. I'm doing a clinical project for telemedicine right now, very ambitious project for remote areas in India, for example. Very exciting, the things it can do for people's health. So I think the opportunities are massive for healthcare if you're in that segment. But on a general basis, I would take two approaches. One is I would ask the question, what can I do alone, myself as a person, with your PhD or whatever you have? And for example, you can become a patent attorney. Patent law is very easy to, within a matter of 1 year, you can get yourself a patent attorney certification, get a great job. US has a massive shortage of patent attorneys. We have a backlog of 3 million patents, something huge. And so that opportunity exists for lots of people who want to jump in. It's a detailed work. I run an institute in India for Indians in that area, so I have a good sense of that domain. A lot of people go from here to get the diploma in Delhi and come back. So I think that's one area. I'm not recruiting for that school, but I'm just saying, consider that as a career shift example. Second one is get together with 2 other people and come and work on an idea, germinate it and develop it, and then go for funding and all that. But that the regular risk route, depending on your appetite for risk and your stage of life and your spouse's support. That's if you're married, very important. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Anybody else? Yes, go ahead.
My question is very general and it's a common problem. So last year we conducted a survey among life science professionals of Indian subcontinent. And we have about 200 people. The data is right in front of me actually. So we asked the people what is the obstacle they have in their career development. Okay. So we gave 4 options. One is understate your own contributions, and risk aversion, fear of failure, then work-life balance, and none of the above. Means the people who don't have any problem. Only 15% people stated they don't have any problem in their career development. Means they progressed very well. And remaining 85% had some problem or other of these 3. And in fact, about 50% stated they always understate their own contributions. I think that is typical Indian problem, right, actually.
Right.
And pretty much other 50 or 60% had risk aversion, fear of failure, or work-life balance. So it doesn't matter these people, these are not published yet, but we'll be publishing soon in EPPIC. Actually, we're working on a publication on that. So that we want to identify the problems associated with the people in the community and make them aware of it. So it doesn't matter if they lived in the US or it doesn't matter if they lived in India.
Right.
So
the question is?
The question is, what is your suggestion for these people to overcome these obstacles, and which seems to be 85% people being affected.
Correct. Okay, so let me give you my perspective from the sample size that I have worked with, because every person I intake, I have a fairly comprehensive intake questionnaire, and I have questions like, are you, as an example, are you an order taker, are you an influencer, are you a visionary, and write percentages. I'm a 40% order taker, 20% influencer, and so forth. And the thing that I find very interesting is that my clients include people all the way up to CEOs and all the way from apprentices. And the thing that I find very puzzling is when a CEO writes that 50 or 60% of his job is order taking. And I'm not making this up. And I'm not attributing that to any particular ethnicity, because I would say that my composition, ethnic composition, is fairly broad, although 50 to 60% of my clientele is Indian. So this is something that I find very puzzling. But here is what I tell my clients to do. We, from where we come, as Indians, from our cultural upbringing, we tend to be working very hard. This is the mindset we have. That if I work hard, if I don't make a lot of noise and follow orders, somebody will recognize me and I'll get what I deserve. And what I tell them is nobody knows what you do unless you tell them what you're going to do it, and tell them you did it, right? That's the first thing I say. And the second thing I say to them is you don't get what you deserve. Now listen to me very carefully. You don't get what you deserve. You get what you negotiate. And we, as the part of the continent where we come from, we are not very good at negotiating. We wait at the time the review is due, and the boss said, this happened to a client, just he called me today, he's in Australia. And he said, he's been there a year, and he heard from his boss this morning that your performance sucks. He told him this morning, a year after he was working there. I said, why did he not tell you on day one that your performance sucked? Why did he wait a year? Well, because his review and bonus are due. So that was a convenient time for his boss to tell him that his whole performance sucked, right? So unless you hold yourself accountable to these standards, that tell them what you're going to do it, and tell them you did it, you're not going to get what you deserve, and unless you know how to negotiate that. So with that said, I would like to send you to the panel.
What he's talking about, there is a book called Power. I'm sure most of you have read it. And they talk about these things, how things happen and all that. So there's a whole lecture if you want to read the book, which is a very powerful book.
I think that's a very broad issue. That's why, each individual has a different reason for why he or she is finding himself or herself stuck, not moving, and so on and so forth. My message is that that person has the steering wheel, as I talked to you in the beginning, and unless that person wakes up and does a very critical, thorough analysis of abilities, attitudes, so there's a big problem in corporations that people don't realize, is that there is a question of symmetry. Organizations have certain expectations from you as a person, and you have certain expectations from the organization. In those cases where people move smoothly up and forward, there is a match. Both seem to maintain a good match of what is expected from both sides. It's a bargain, it's a deal. And when things go asymmetric, that's when dissatisfaction sets in, when the boss is calling you, which by the way is totally undesirable forever to be told on a telephone or email about your book. That's a very unacceptable way to communicate with human beings. You should always be face to face. That's a comment to what Dilip just had one of his people suffer from, which is bad. Compensation and performance issues should be face to face, never long distance on any mechanism. That's one rule that I give people. I don't do this consulting business, by the way. I'm just giving you this as my personal kind of perceptions and experiences.
I'm sure in the audience there are people. I'm sure there are people in the audience who can also provide answers. The answers don't have to come from us, and you might want to comment on some of these things, and that's much better in a way. I'll learn that way. Does anybody has anything to add?
Some good experience.
So, Kailash, what you mentioned about the steering wheel being in your hands, I think is a very powerful statement, because truly if you take up ownership for what you do, you pretty much drive some aspects of it. But tagging along what Nagesh said also about the luck aspect, which is very important, and I was just telling that table over there where when you're prepared with what you do and then opportunity knocks, that's what happens when you get lucky, because you're prepared at what you do. And the last statement I'd like to say is that personally, I also believe that back to the listening skills that every one of you mentioned, it's also very important to have a mentor who actually guides you, that you trust and that believes in you, to actually show you where you can grow. And Klaus has been my mentor and has skyrocketed my career within Siemens amazingly well, and made me realize the things that I didn't know I could do, and put me in positions that I had never anticipated, from being an individual contributor to having 100 people reporting to me with 3-4 layers of management, and gave me goals. And he was doing this to me about negotiations, because I made cost savings for the company that was multi-X, and I negotiated saying I need a bonus for that, and he did. But it was incredible, because if you like what Dilip said, do what you say and then make it happen, it's an amazing satisfaction of accomplishing something that's incredible.
So just before you stop, I have a question for you, and then the same question for Klaus. So what do you think made you a good mentee, and what do you think, what was that you think got you continuing and him paying attention to you as a mentee? Over what characteristic did he see in you? You think, not, and then I'll let him confirm later.
Yeah, so I wanted to contradict Dilip a little bit on the sample of Nita, because she's an excellent negotiator. And that also gives the answer already to you, because I was probably a week or so in California responsible for this ultrasound group, the Ecosone acquisition that we had done years ago. And we had an outing somewhere in the Palm Desert, Palm Springs, and all of a sudden somebody sat next to me and said, by the way, I'm Nita Matra, and I want to have a career. So and that is a very short version. She didn't say it as such, but the way she came to me was clearly an indication that she had planned to not stay forever in the same position. Not knowing what she wanted to do, but it is attitude, and winning, as you all know, is an attitude.
Very well. Okay.
I want to encourage people in the audience to add their knowledge also, not just wait for advice, okay? Go ahead.
So, I have something just to add, and also, actually it's more of a comment, but more of a, hearing your views on it. You talk about in the work setting, people, how they interact, you talk about the behavior in the relationship. At least in my 40 plus years of, life, what I have noticed is that people are just they're not generous in praising others for a job well done. Whether it's a peer, whether it's superior or subordinate, or even, in a social setting, a friend or a neighbor, this thing lacks quite a bit. But on the other hand, piling on criticism, is so quick, and people want to pile on criticism in public. Because if I made that one point which is critical of others and 10 people heard it, or I send the email, copied 50 people, I think I'll get good support, okay? So this is the one of the things that I kept telling people, if you have any issue or criticism or constructive, in particular, talk to that person, like Kailash said, okay? The boss basically gave this guy feedback on the phone. That is a horrible thing to do. You just don't give feedback, or you don't offer, criticism on the phone. You have to go and, say, I have an issue with you. Can we discuss that in an interesting setting? And a lot of CIC, and I'm pretty sure apply to a lot of you, because it's too quick. Well, I'm in a meeting, and if I just made one important point and everybody heard me, like Kailash said, okay, I said, hey, you're stupid, right? But I think this thing still holds true even to this day. And so if you could just kind of comment a little bit more to each other, which will be really...
I add that comment because that's very dear to my heart. In fact, in my management, whenever I have had people work for me, managers who also had people working for them, I used to have two fundamental rules on praising and credits, which is a very important part of a human being. They want to be credited when they do good jobs. First rule of credits is you better be 100% sure that the credit is deserved, because undeserved credit is backfires big time for you and the organization in a bad way. So I'll give you an example. Whenever we had a big thing at IBM, for example, that we have big awards, like somebody wants to be awarded 100,000, they'll bring it over and I'll say, okay. So the manager who's coming in will say, okay. I said, okay, tell me, give me the 3 names that will be most upset when this award is posted on the bulletin board. That was my first question. I said, I don't just question you for the benefit, the value, all that stuff, because you are the closest to the scene. I used to be far removed from that. Just bring me 3 names and sleep over it tonight. Don't talk about it right now. Come back tomorrow, 8:30, whatever, give him a time, and give me 3 names of people and why they would be upset. Let me tell you something. Half the awards did not come back to me again. They thought about it and they saw some level of unfairness, exclusion, or something valid. They said, I cannot justify this, because I said, if 3 people are upset, we have a major problem. If one person is upset, we can sort of handle it, and I have no reason. So that's one rule. Second one is never praise people in private alone. If the praise is noteworthy, you should be brave enough to make a beautiful statement in public, meaning among the peer group. The third rule is when somebody gets a credit, that person should take that credit, like if it is 1 pound in sort of quantitative terms, that person can make 10 1-pound bags of credit and pass it on to those who help that person. So if you get a credit for doing a great job, you go to your technicians and say, by the way, hey, without you, this would have never happened. I thank you very much. And take a flower or a coffee, whatever you do. So share the credit is very important, and never criticize in public. If you're a manager, you have to quietly talk to the person, say, hey, that was not good, or by the way, this criticism in private, very healthy, people really appreciate it. It's very important how you manage credit and criticism, and thank you, Vishnu, for bringing that up. It's very important. And by the way, that's how you get branded. If you insult people, they say, this guy is so ruthless, he's so bad, bad mouthing person, you get branded. Those are the things that brand you. So your sensitivity is very important. Thanks.
Let me go back. What I'd like to see happen here. Participation by the people in the audience, rather than giving a lecture. I want to ask Bakul. He has a lot of interesting experience. Here's a guy who's moved from Africa to Gujarat, back to Africa, to Canada, and all these places, different experiences, and he continues to go on, doing some interesting things that a lot of people don't know. I'm saying there are a number of people like that in this audience. I'd like to hear from you people. Cool.
And you picked me, Nagesh?
Not pick on you, pick him.
Yeah, thanks, Nagesh. This is a very interesting panel, and those of us at TiE, and I'm sure at EPPIC, will understand the advantages, the benefits of gaining that knowledge and insight from folks here and some in the audience. But as Nagesh said, I had an interesting career. I was born in Kenya, did my university studies in India, which I had not seen until I went there, although my parents came from there, moved back, moved from Kenya to Uganda, Uganda to Toronto, Canada, and as Kailash said, I didn't know a single soul. Fortunately, we went there in April, so it wasn't that cold, snow wasn't there, driving wasn't that difficult, but come winter, and I joined as a salesman as a company. And one thing I realized is that you have to have that attitude that you want to achieve something. So you're in a totally new place. A lot of us came that way. And so how do you do that? Is by applying yourself, by understanding the local conditions, whether it's corporate conditions, and I worked for Burroughs Corporation, which, bless its soul, it's no longer there. It became Unisys, and you know what has happened to Unisys, but it was a great company. Started in 1882 by William Seward Burroughs, who discovered the first practical adding machine. And all the bankers loved it because you don't have to add all that. And a very interesting story that I suggested to Nagesh, that when I joined Burroughs in Nairobi, Kenya, and they wouldn't transfer me to Canada, so I had to take my own immigration. But that's a different story. So we had to take this big, heavy adding machine and go from door to door, selling into the streets of Nairobi. This was back in the early 60s. And that's an interesting experience, but if that doesn't teach you what selling is, how to go past whoever is in the front of the shop or the office, and then go to the decision maker, was one of the best experience that I earned. And that's why I always say that selling is very important in the United States and all over the world, but more so in America, because you do have to sell yourself in a very, very nice way. Within the corporate structure, within your own groups or the division that you are in. But this interesting story was I walked into an Indian shop, and there were a lot of Indians there, migrated over the past century in South Africa, in East Africa, everywhere. And there was an area at that time called the Indian Bazaar. So I walk in there with my adding machine, and the gentleman sitting on a little, the old-fashioned pillows, says, I don't need an adding machine because I can add it faster than your machine. So I said, yeah, no, you're right, but let's have a contest. Now, this is a true story. I think Nagesh remembers that. So he said, here is my page of the ledger. So I told him, I said, you already written the numbers, so allow me to write the numbers on my machine. So I punched in all those numbers, so while he's adding it up, I had to press just the total key. And the sale was done. So I'm a believer in selling in the sense that tell what you have achieved, what you are planning to do within the groups, within the corporation, or within your own entrepreneurial efforts that you are doing by starting a company. So I think selling is very, very important.
Yeah, there is another person I want to call. Ram, you're sitting back there. Come forward, please. Ram has an extraordinary experience, the kind of company he has developed and where he's going and the vision he has created hundreds of jobs all over. Can you share any of these ideas and stories you have? I think that will be more interactive than me giving a lecture.
I don't think I can have the same level of experience as our guests here today, but my only thoughts I'd like to add to what we have talked here today is working in India from 1987
as the market has evolved and things have changed over there, you have to reinvent yourself every 2-3 years completely as a company, as the leadership has to either evolve and fit to the times or move away and we bring new blood in. So unless you are willing to do both of those things on a dynamic basis where you see a new market, a new competition, new environment that comes in, and some companies have just stayed within themselves and stayed and vegetatively grown, but they haven't innovated and they haven't looked outwards to bring in talent, and they, from my industry, in my industry and from my experiences, haven't done very well. So that's one element that I could say is very essential in a global market like this.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I would actually like to ask a question.
Yeah,
And, pardon, do I need that?
Yes, yes.
And first of all, I wanted to say my dad was a veteran IBMer, and I grew up in East Fishkill, New York. And I know that in the 60s